The HTML5 drag and drop API means that we can make almost any element on our web application draggable. So it is a powerful user interface concept which makes it easy to copy, reorder, and delete items with the help of mouse clicks. So you have any games, you have like you have a page where you will have to drag and drop file into it instead of clicking on browse and taking a file. So everything is drag and drop. So this allows the user to click, hold the mouse button down over an element, drag it to another location, and release the mouse button to drop the element there. So you have drag and drop. So to achieve drag and drop functionality with the traditional HTML4, like the earlier versions of HTML, developer would either have to write complex JavaScript programming or other JavaScript frameworks, like you will have to use jQuery, etc. for that. But now with the basic HTML5, you will be able to use it. So HTML5 has become the basic now. So now with HTML5, we have the drag and drop API that brings the native DND support to the browser, making it much, much easier to code. So it is supported by all the major browsers like Chrome, Firefox, Safari. And then we have a couple of events that we have with the drag and drop. We have the drag start, which fires when the user starts dragging an object. And then you have drag enter, which is fired when the mouse is first moved over the target element while a drag is occurring. A listener for this event should indicate when a drop is allowed over this location. So if there are no listeners or the listeners perform no operations, then a drop is not allowed by default. I repeat, if there are no listeners or the listener perform no operations, then a drop is not allowed by default. And then we have drag over. This event is fired as the mouse is moved over an element when a drag is occurring. Much of the time, the operation that occurs during the listener will be the same as the drag enter event only. So they would just be the same. The drag enter and drag over would generally overlap with each other. And then we have drag leave, which is fired when the mouse leaves an element while a drag is occurring. Listeners should remove any highlighting or the insertion markers used for the drop feedback. And then we have the drag, which fires every time the mouse is moved while the object is being dragged. And then we have the drop. The drop event is fired on the element when the drop was occurred at the end of the drag operation, So a listener would be responsible for retrieving the data being dragged and inserting it at the drop location. And then finally, we have drag end, which fires when the user releases the mouse button while dragging an object. Yeah. And then we have the data transfer object. So the event listener methods for all the drag and object accepts an event object which has a read-only attribute called as data transfer. So the event, so it is being called with event.data transfer. So we don't have to actually assign it to data transfer.d. We could just use event.data transfer. So the event.data transfer returns the data transfer object that is associated with the event for you. So let's go into the example really quickly. So once again, so I drag and I drop it here. On drop, this is just going to get. So what I have done here is that I have put the ID of the target here in the attribute called text. And then on drop, I am taking that ID and then doing a document.get element by ID of the data, which is going to be the ID of the div that's going to be Dropbox, and then doing an append child.